What is up, YouTube? Crankshaft here, and I have a very sad bit of news to break to all of you. It's, I guess, not sad per se, it's just bittersweet. This is actually going to be my final ride on the KLR. At least this KLR, or any KLR for some time. Because I am actually about to, today at work, trade this for something. I'm just going to leave that a little bit of a secret, super special surprise here. You'll get a little hint at the end of the video. I doubt anyone would really be able to figure it out, but sort of following a recent trend, these kinds of bikes are getting extremely popular nowadays. Yeah, without getting any more into it than that, they're definitely popular bikes. The style of bike is very popular, and it's fantastic. I'm very much looking forward to the things I'm going to do to this next bike. And I wanted to talk about something that's kind of pertinent to the topic at hand of me getting rid of the KLR, and that is my individual journey as a rider. So, those of you that know or have been with the channel long enough, because I know I've got maybe 200 subscribers since I got the KLR-ish. So those of you that don't know, before the KLR, there was a CBR, and before the CBR, I had a, well, I still have an SR400 that I have mixed feelings about. And before the CBR, but after the SR, I actually had a 1994 Virago XV535. Kind of a small bike, but a shit ton of fun. Shaft drive, really torquey. I was very, very happy with it during the time I had it. I ended up actually, I bought it for like next to nothing, and I ended up selling it for several $100s more than I bought it for. Which several $100s doesn't necessarily sound like a huge profit on a bike, but I only paid a couple $100s for it. So, yeah, it was a fun project though. All around, it's just a really fun motorcycle. Not like a, you know, kind of motorcycle like the CBR was after I got it. Because, man, when I upgraded to the CBR, hot damn. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, I started out on the SR400. Those of you that aren't particularly familiar with it, when I got the SR back out of the shop, you could see the stark difference in my opinion of it. Because I used to think it was a decently fast motorcycle. I was like, man, this is like faster than most cars, you know? Holy shit. I've yet to have something come up against the line with me, you know, against a fucking stoplight and be able to beat me. Up until like 50 or 60 miles an hour anyway. Then it falls on its face because it's a tiny bike. But I was really impressed with that. I was like, wow, this is so much faster than my car. This is so much faster than my friends' cars. And I kind of learned to ride it. I made a shit ton of mistakes. I wrecked it a couple of times. I dropped it a couple of times, like in parking lots. It was a kickstart only, so I learned very quickly not to stall my bike. But I did still manage to stall it, I don't know, 50 times in the first 2 days of me learning to ride it. Because I didn't take a safety course. I basically, like 3 days before I decided I wanted a motorcycle. And this will kind of help you understand how impulsive I really am. Wow, I see that car all the time. That car's fucking cool. Yeah, impulsive. I have really bad ADHD, in case any of you didn't already know that from my videos. I've had a couple people tell me, like, man, you had this really cool thought that you were talking about and you totally went off on a tangent and never returned to it. Oh, right, the SR. So, about 3 days before I picked up the SR, started thinking about motorcycles, and I was like, man, it'd be really cool to own a motorcycle. So I went online to the nearest dealership, looked through their inventory and stuff, Googled the shit out of like best starter bikes, this bike, bikes you won't grow tired of, best bang for your buck starter bike, all this other shit. I decided on like a, for the life of me, I can't find what it was, but it looked like a really cool bike. And it was like an 800, so very, very, very large for a starter bike. But it wasn't like a, you know, it wasn't like Gixxer 750 as far as that displacement. It didn't perform that way. It was more sport touring oriented or cruiser oriented. So you'd be looking at more like a 120 mile an hour top speed or so, a decent amount of low end torque. Definitely not a beginner's bike, but certainly not like an advanced bike that a beginner would get themselves killed on. Like if say a beginner jumps on a CBR 1000. Like, fuck that, no, bad idea. So I went to the dealership, I was like, hey, I want to buy that bike you guys have. And the guy was like, okay, and talked to me about different like bikes that I was interested in and what I liked about it and all this other shit. And then basically sort of convinced me. I worked as a car salesman for a good amount of time after I got the bike and realized what he did. But it's just, he sold me on to something that, I walked in, he realized that I was unfamiliar with motorcycles in general, that I was going to walk out with one regardless of what it was. So he directed me towards one that wasn't selling very well, so he could get rid of one. And that was the SR400, which it doesn't sell very well, mainly because it's a small displacement bike. It's a kickstart only, very retro. It's very niche. But it was a fun bike, and it was a very distinctive bike, and it got looks, you know, it got the attention that, to be fair, we all want when we start riding. Like, there's not a whole lot of reasons people start riding. There's thrill and adrenaline, that's awesome, but most of the time you don't even know how thrilling it is until you're, you know, riding one. When you buy it, you're like, hey, I want to look like a badass, so you buy a badass motorcycle. And I bought an SR400, so I don't know what I look like, but everyone's got to start somewhere. And don't get me wrong, it's a fun bike. I've enjoyed my time with it. I've just had a lot of bad experiences with it as well. But anywho, I get the SR, it blows up. All those shenanigans happen. If you've seen my previous videos discussing it, you know all about them. After the SR, I bought a 1994 XV535, the Virago 535. Fun little cruiser. A lot more power than the SR, with more power than I was used to and familiar with. Suddenly I could do 95, 100 on the freeway, and it felt awesome. You know, it was a lot rougher around the edges. You know, it had a choke, it was carbureted. You had to pay attention to what you were doing on it. It was old, it was a piece of shit when I got it. So I fixed it up, you know. I did an oil change, just basic stuff that, looking back on it now, was absolutely nothing. Like, I didn't fix it up, you know. I redid the paint job on it, and I did an oil change. And that's it. Oh, and I swapped around some mirrors and stuff, and I think I put bar ends on it or something like that. But like, I did just about nothing to this bike here. Alright, I thought they were gonna, oh well. Wooly. Shitty wooly. So I get the Virago. Really fun bike, really torquey bike. I love the shaft drive. I'm working at the car dealership now, so I'm taking this to work every day. Really, really fun bike. I just love the thing. Had some overheating issues. Ended up selling it to a guy. Made some profit. You know, I talked about that earlier. Fun bike though. After that, I started getting into motovlogging. I started watching motovloggers. I started dreaming about motovlogging. I don't know if I've said this in a video or not, but the first time I ever saw a motovlog was someone on their bike, just riding. It was on the motorcycles subreddit. And I was like, oh, wow, this is just somebody riding around on their bike. It's like it's first person. And they weren't even motovlogging. They were just riding around and talking about, like, well, I guess that is motovlogging. But they didn't have like a topic in mind. It was literally someone riding around talking about something random. And it was mostly just them riding. And I commented and I was like, dude, holy shit. I would totally watch more of these if you like started to, you know, make more of these, if you just riding around and talking. And someone was like, you mean motovlogging? So I was like, and Googled it, and I was like, holy shit. There's all these motovloggers, like all these other people had the same idea that I had. And oh man, it's just, as soon as I hit that, I was like, I just fell in love with the community. I think 6 Foot was the very first motovlogger I actually saw, just because at the time he was one of the more popular. I quickly found Dan, Chase, you know, Motonosity I found a little bit later, because at the time I was in Arkansas, but I was kind of paying attention to what was going on in Georgia, because I grew up in Georgia. So I saw the bikes they were on. It was almost all super sports. So I was thinking, man, that looks fun. And now, before that, I was never a fan of what I called crotch rockets. I was like, oh, you know, it's a fucking sport bike. You just go 150 miles an hour everywhere you go, and you get yourself hurt and die. And then I started seeing these guys riding them, talking about them. I started seeing like the racing aspect of it, of not just let's go fast in a straight line, but like Chase going up and hitting Blood Mountain, Chase wrecking Holly, rebuilding her, all this other stuff that I was just fascinated by. So I decided, fuck it, let's buy a damn sport bike. So I get my, at the time, fiance, and I'm like, hey, I found this sport bike, right? And it's in Pensacola, Florida, and it's a 7-hour drive. Should we go pick it up? And she's like, yeah, sure. And I was like, okay, cool. And she was like, do you want to leave in the morning? And I was like, I was thinking we leave right now. And it's like 2 a.m. So we leave at 2 in the morning. The bike's on eBay. I buy it. We drive all the way down, and then I have her bring her helmet. And at this point, we have Cena's. So she puts on the motorcycle helmet while she's driving back. I put on the helmet riding my CBR. And we're talking all the way back, giving each other directions and stuff, saying, hey, there's this there, there's that there. We get stopped at a light. Hey, no worries, I'm right up the street. Just, you know, let me know when you start pulling out, and I'll pull out of this little side street or whatever. So much fun. Amazing trip. Her first time at the beach, actually, was going and picking up the CBR. So, wonderful, wonderful memories. Now, the Virago taught me that not every bike is this cleaned up 2015 SR400 that you never have to touch, you never have to do anything to. It's rough around the edges. The sport bike taught me something very different, and that is you could die on this. You could die on this so hard. I started really paying attention to my maintenance at that point, because I was like, this machine underneath me is the only thing keeping me alive right now. If I mess something up, if I break something, I'm fucked. And I had to replace the brake rotors. I had to do a lot of different things on it. The first time I ever took the wheels off a bike was the CBR. And then the CBR taught me probably the most important motorcycle lesson I have ever gotten. And that is when I wrecked that shit. When I barreled into a truck at like 50 miles an hour, flew 20 feet, skidded on the ground, and spent fucking 4 or 5, 6 hours in the hospital. And then several months after that recovering to the point that I could just walk without a cane. I mean, I'm still injured from that. My left shoulder still, I don't have the range of motion it had before. I don't have the lifting capacity that I had before. To this day, if I try to lift something behind my back with my left arm, like my shoulder just explodes into just throbbing pain. Bad shit, real bad shit. And that taught me something massive, and that is wear your damn gear. The only place I got seriously injured, aside from my shoulder, because the first thing that hit the truck was my left shoulder. And I was wearing this jacket, and I've got a giant, like, fucking, it's the Sedici jacket, you guys know about it. It's got that giant plastic plate over it. And that took the brunt of the impact, but it's still, you know, it's a mid-range jacket, so it didn't protect me as well as something else would have. So I just fucked up my shoulder, tore something in it. But I blew out my left knee. I sprained my left ankle. My legs were just hamburger meat because I was wearing fucking jeans and Vans. Now, granted, I've done it once or twice since then. But like, if I'm commuting, if I'm going somewhere where I'm like, all right, I've been on this road a million times. I know my guard is going to be down. I'm not going to be quite as aware as I normally am. The gear is going on my body. It's not worth it. It's not worth not wearing gear. It's fucking, the high today is like 97 degrees. This is a leather jacket. These are Kevlar motorcycle jeans. Those are fucking Sedici ankle boots. I am wearing plenty of gear. Oh, is there a cop behind me? My thing's vibrating too much, but yeah, it looks like a Kia. It's hard to tell. But yeah, like, I don't go without gear anymore. And fucking, like, gauntlet gloves instead of those shitty other gloves that I was wearing at the time. I do not fuck with not wearing gear anymore. And that, I think, is definitely the most important lesson that I've been taught so far by any bike. But then, I found a passion in rebuilding the CBR. I took the CBR and just broke it all the way down, took all the broken pieces off, started looking at it, envisioning what I wanted out of the bike, and I rebuilt that shit as a street fighter, which is, granted, I would rather have it in its full fairing form. But with what I had and the resources I had, I created a bike that was just incredibly fun to ride, super torquey. Oh my god, with the sprocket I put on there, it was a beautiful, beautiful motorcycle. And I miss it to death, and I love it to death. But it taught me that working on motorcycles, building motorcycles, that shit is what I want to do. That is my passion more than anything else. And I always knew I would end up in the motorcycle industry ever since I started riding. I would thought, oh, well, let me be a motorcycle mechanic or a mechanical engineer in the motorcycle industry. Something like that at the time when I thought that's what I was going to be doing. And then I've gradually worked my way towards this now, and I know I'm going to be in the motorcycle industry. And who knows, in a year and a half, 2 years, I might change my mind. I might not want to be a motorcycle mechanic anymore. But as it stands right now, I love working on motorcycles. I love making them better. I love fixing them. I love just exploring like the intricacy of the design in these engines, because they really are something else. There's always something else to learn. There's always something I can push myself to do. Like the engine rebuild I'm doing on the CB750 right now. If you had told me, hell, 6 months ago, that I was going to be completely pulling an engine out of a frame of a bike that hasn't run in 35 years, pulling it down to its bare bones, and putting it all back together, and then that bike would fire up. You know, ideally it hasn't yet, but I'm hoping it will. If all goes well, I know it will. I'd have been like, nah, that's not me. I can't do that. That's crazy. But I am doing that. I can do that. And as far as the KLR goes, I haven't had it for a very long time, but I've seriously enjoyed the time that I've had it. Going off-road, I've learned to get comfortable, at least somewhat, with, you know, the rear end kicking out, not having ideal traction. I've noticed that's really drastically improved my riding, and a couple times, especially since I put this knobby tire on, that I've had the rear end kind of slip out on me in corners on the street. I've been able to deal with it. I've been able to control the bike and bring it back in without like wrecking. Being able to ride on the dirt, even if it's very, very little, just dramatically changes your view of having traction and not having traction. It's very, very interesting. It highly recommended, 10 out of 10 to any of you that might be thinking about learning to ride on the dirt. It is well worth it. I think the height of the KLR also helped me develop a lot more skills as far as my riding goes. As tall as it is, it's uncomfortable to put my feet down. So I've gotten in the habit of never putting my feet down, as little as possible. So as I'm going around a parking lot, I won't put my feet down. I'll ride the rear brake a little bit for stability. I'll balance the bike. And part of it is, I really have for a while wanted to get into cross training, which elements of cross training are sort of involving never putting your feet down. It's like trials, essentially, but for enduro stuff. It's very, very interesting. If you haven't looked into that, you definitely should, because those skills are incredible to have as a rider. Just having those in your portfolio of skills is going to help you out of so many sticky situations you could find yourself in on the street. And hell, off-road. I mean, the knowledge of that is invaluable off-road. So yeah, God, this video has gone on for a very long time, but I have very much enjoyed my time with both this motorcycle, my past motorcycles. There's never a point that you can really say, cool, I'm now a good rider. I am now an excellent rider. Because there's so many variables, you can never be in complete control on a motorcycle. All you can do is plan for the worst and hope. But yeah, guys, I'm gonna miss this bike. I'm gonna miss it a lot. I miss my CBR, I miss my Virago. But I'm really excited for what's coming next, and I think you guys are really gonna be happy with it too. Peace out, YouTube.